Hi, Sophia. We're going to take a look at your emphasis posting, offer some observations as to what we're seeing. Um, we already went through the general video there where I was talking more about the objectives of the project and why it was set up the way it was. In this, I'd much rather kind of get into some of the individual points of the work that you've posted, maybe offer some specific advice or feedback on some of the photographs that you're making. So first of all, I really appreciate how specific you were when organizing the posting. It makes it very sort of clear as to which one you mean to qualify for which one. Believe it or not, that is something that some are having trouble with identifying which ones or following the sort of frameworks of the project. This is something that in the professional environment that you really have to be paying attention to. So it looks like you have that really kind of all in order. Now, if there was kind of one thing, if there was, one major thing that I would see that is really going for you well in these images, it's a tremendous amount of structure that you've got going on. You really do take advantage of the entire space of the picture plane. And what I mean is, so you have this square or triangle, and you have all of these edges to work with. You have the entire space to kind of organize. And it seems like you are paying attention to pretty much all of it. There doesn't seem to be areas where you are ignoring. From the very farthest away in something like this, where you have, very specifically here all the way to here and including those elements. This seems very deliberate in terms of the distance that you've used, where you've placed these tracks here. All of that seems very intentional. Whether it was or not, it appears intentional. Images like, where was it? Nope. Like this one, again, very deliberate in the way that it appears to be structured. You've got extremely straight lines. You've positioned yourself in a way that any of the angles, they don't converge. They don't kind of do this because they're going away from you. You've gotten just at the right height so all of the lines line up like this. And then go straight across. Even your inclusion of the sun, which is a kind of a tricky thing most of the time, here you've placed it in such a way it lines up with this line. It's really remarkable how you're doing that. It's really quite well done. Even this diagonal shadow that's happening right in here, it's all sort of well organized. It's like you've taken the composition and you've really tightened everything up, and there's nothing left to sort of chance with it. And this can create a tremendous amount of energy within your photography. What usually challenges artists that come to this kind of structure very easily, what usually challenges them is working organically, working outside of that structure, where you have maybe no sort of rules, or you have no sort of predetermined structure to work with. What do you do? There is a point here that I do want to kind of illustrate, and that is where this pole shadow is coming out of the corner. And I'll make a point in class to talk about this a little bit, because several students I've noticed, have done this. Sometimes very few students do it. But basically, when you have a picture frame in this sort of rectangular form, I'll hold up this Post-it note here as a square. But the most interesting parts are going to be these corners here, because that's where it changes direction. That's if it's totally blank. These are going to be the interesting points. So when we start a composition, those corners are the most interesting part already. So usually we don't want to redirect someone's attention to those corners, at least not overly. We want to address them, but we don't want to call attention to them or highlight them in a way that distracts. So by putting or allowing a point of very high contrast, which is what this is, and a line that winds up right here in the edge, that might actually have been a deliberate choice by you, but what you're actually accomplishing there is a tremendous amount of pull that draws us away from the composition. It actually like draws us away because that energy, that contrast is saying, come look at me down in this corner. The corner is a very dynamic thing to begin with. So it's like energy on top of energy. So we tend to want to move that out of there. So for instance, on this corner here, I just randomly flipped to it, but this edge here, notice how it's not going into the corner. And it's well above that. So you're not getting that kind of energy in this. You're actually getting a very interesting counterbalance because this is going in this direction. This one's going in this direction. So you're getting a really good sort of cross diagonal that's happening in that image. So when we get to the last couple here, this is where it seems like, yeah, you are kind of trying to figure out just what are you supposed to do with this, right? You seem very, very comfortable with, even these where they're relatively close up and you have this prompt in front of you, like there's a thing you're trying to achieve. But as you see it, it's a little bit more of a challenge, right? Because there really isn't a visual prompt that you're going for. I'm having you get so close that things may not be in focus. There might not be any structure there. You might be just looking at shadows and shapes and things like that. So what do you do with that? And so it seems like, that might be an area that you'll want to address because seems so natural, the other stuff, that you just want to go on to the other side of it. You want to go to the more abstract and see what you can do on that side of it. You'll be surprised at how much it'll influence your very sort of technical work by letting loose. It's the same with somebody who's very good at the organic to really tighten up and do something that is extremely organized and see how that influences the other. So you're always wanting to create these counterbalances in terms of your creativity so that you're always sort of keeping loose. You do one thing to break out of the habit of something, but then that thing you do to break out of the habit becomes a habit, and then you got to break something else. And so that's what creativity can kind of get you into, this sort of continual sort of, well, let me counterman that. Let me do something different here. And you're always looking for that. To the outsider, it may look like maybe chaos, but it really isn't. It's more like just sort of counter and using contrast to our advantage. So that's what I have for you. I really enjoy your photographs. I look forward to seeing more of what you do, and we'll see you in the studio. All right, bye now.